So the UFC middleweight division has surprisingly become one of the most interesting divisions in all of MMA. But despite that and how many different matchups you can put together, there are only two guys in the entire top 15 that have a fight scheduled, and that's Brendan Allen and Marvin Vettori against each other. So what do you do with guys like the new champion Dricus? What do you do with the former champion Sean Strickland? What about Hamzat, who's number 11? There are plenty of guys outside of the top 15, like Ikram Aliskerov. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through and matchmake the entire top 10 of the middleweight division and put together the fights I think should be made. Starting with the new champion Dricus du Plessis, who is in a very interesting spot because there's no clear number one contender. Out of everyone, I would say Jared Cannonier is the most deserving of a title shot, with him having a win over the former champion Sean Strickland. And he also ran through Marvin Vettori, but he did get a title shot not too long ago and he got dominated, and it wasn't a good fight either. It was a pretty boring performance. Plus, he's only on a 2-fight win streak. And then we also have Hamzat Chimaev, who Dana promised a title shot after the Kamaru Usman fight, but he is only number 11 in the rankings, and he hasn't even beat a ranked middleweight opponent. Kamaru Usman was coming up from 170 on short notice. The Kevin Holland fight as well was at 180-pound catchweight. The only fight he's had against a real middleweight was against Gerald Meerschaert. There is also Israel Adesanya. There's the history between them two, the bad blood. It's a big fight, but does Izzy deserve an immediate rematch? I don't think so. He already got that against Alex Pereira and then fought Sean Strickland next and got absolutely dominated. So I think he needs one more win. So the fight that I think should be put together is the rematch between Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. Now, I don't think Sean is deserving of an immediate rematch. He wasn't some long reigning champion and he didn't really deserve his title shot in the first place. But because there's not any clear number one contender, along with the fact that their first fight was very close, a lot of people, including myself, thought Sean won. So this would give both guys the opportunity to settle the score with each other. Plus, it is a great fight. Their first fight was very good. I think a rematch would be even better, as both guys are getting better so fast. Every single time we see Dricus or Sean fight, they just continue to improve. And they both just have styles that's always going to make for an entertaining fight. I think both the hardcore and the casual audience would get behind this fight. I think it would sell pretty well, and I just think the rematch makes the most sense out of everything. And then we go to the number 2 ranked contender and the former middleweight champion, one of the greatest middleweights of all time, Israel Adesanya. Adesanya is in a weird spot because, as I said, I don't think he's deserving of a title shot, and I think most people would agree with me on that. But he's also not far off. I think one win against the right opponent and he's right back in there. And there are a lot of guys who are inching closer and closer to a title shot. There are the rematches with Robert Whittaker and Jared Cannonier. Those fights do make some sense because they are coming off wins. Jared Cannonier's coming off 2 wins. They're both getting closer to a title shot, and if Izzy were to beat Whittaker or Cannonier, he'd definitely be right in there. But he has already fought both of these guys. He fought Whittaker twice and he's beat him twice, and those fights didn't happen too long ago. Plus, the Cannonier and even the second Whittaker fight weren't the most entertaining. So I think what makes the most sense is to put together Israel Adesanya versus Hamzat Chimaev. They've been talking about this fight for a long time. It's a massive fight between two of the biggest stars of the middleweight division. It's one of the only fights that could potentially headline a pay-per-view without a title on the line, and it could definitely be a co-main, hopefully a 5-round co-main. But not only does it make sense business-wise, it also makes sense ranking-wise because the winner of this fight will definitely get a title shot, and it's just a fun fight in general. The build-up between these two, they both have very good personalities, and stylistically, it's a competitive fight. It's a entertaining fight. Can Hamzat take Izzy down? And if he can't, how does he fare on the feet? If it is a 5-round fight and Izzy's able to escape the early rounds, how does Hamzat's cardio hold up? Will Izzy be able to put the pressure on him? There's a lot of intrigue for this fight. It's a great fight. It makes sense monetarily, and the winner will definitely get a title shot. So I think this fight makes the most sense for both guys. And then there's Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker is in a weird spot because he's coming off a win against Paulo Costa, but he did just lose to the current champ Dricus du Plessis, and he's already got a title shot not too long ago, and he is only on a 1-fight win streak, but he is getting closer to a title shot with his win over Paulo Costa. He's probably a fight or 2 away. There's a potential fight with Hamzat Chimaev. That could make some sense. There is an Israel Adesanya rematch, but he's already fought him twice and lost twice. There is also Sean Strickland if they're not going to do the rematch with Dricus, but what I think makes the most sense is a rematch with Jared Cannonier. The issue with Robert Whittaker is he's been around so long, he's fought all of these guys already, including Cannonier, but I think this makes sense ranking-wise. They're both number 3 and 4 in the rankings. If Cannonier were to beat Whittaker, he would definitely get a title shot, and if Whittaker Whittaker were to beat Cannonier, he might be able to call for a title shot, but he'd probably need one more win. But Jared Cannonier has been calling for this fight after Paulo Costa pulled out against Robert Whittaker in the summer. Cannonier did offer to step in on short notice to replace him. They also do have history with each other, with them fighting before a few years back. And their first fight was very entertaining. Cannonier showed a lot of holes in Whittaker's game and was having a lot of success, but Whittaker was able to get the decision. But this does give Cannonier the chance to right that wrong in his head and cement himself for a title shot. And then we got Marvin Vettori, who will be taking on Brendan Allen in April, and that's the fight that should be made. That's the fight that I would have put together. Vettori is coming off a loss to Jared Cannonier, so he kind of has to look down in the rankings, and Brendan Allen is a younger, up-and-coming prospect who's put together a good win streak. He has won his last 5 fights and has beat guys like Andre Muniz, Bruno Silva, and most recently Paul Craig, so I do think this fight makes sense ranking-wise, plus it's a pretty good fight. And then we go to Paulo Costa, who just lost to Robert Whittaker. Put up a good performance. As I said, I think that was the best version of Paulo Costa I have ever seen, but he definitely needs to look down in the rankings now. He had his chance against Robert Whittaker to jump up, get himself into title contention, but now because he did lose that fight, he's going to have to look below him. You could put the Khamzat fight back together. They have history between them too. Paulo Costa just said on Twitter, I think today or yesterday, that he still wants that fight with Khamzat. It does make sense somewhat rankings wise, but I think they'd want Khamzat to fight someone higher than number 7. But there is a history between them two, and that would be an amazing fight, a very entertaining fight. But what I think makes the most sense for Paulo Costa is him to fight Nasruddin Imavov. Imavov is coming off a good win against Roman Dolidze. He's pretty young, 28 years old, 13-4. He's got a ton of potential, so the UFC could use Costa as a way to build up Imavov as a younger star, the future of the middleweight division. They're both number 7 and number 8 in the rankings respectively, and I think a fight between those two would be pretty competitive and could make for a pretty good fight as well. Now, Jack Hermanson is in a weird spot because he did just beat Joe Pyfer and he absolutely dominated him, fraud checked him, you could say, but there's not really anyone for him to fight above him, so he's going to have to look down in the rankings again. Plus, he's only on a 1-fight win streak against a guy who isn't even ranked, and he is 35 years old, so he's probably going to be used as a stepping stone for a lot of these younger guys to break into the top 10. And I think the fight that makes the most sense is Anthony Hernandez. He's coming off a good win against Roman Kopylov. He's also just put together a good win streak in general. He beat Marc-Andre Barriault, he beat Edmund Shabazian. He's 12-2, has a lot of potential, very good grappler, so I think this is the fight you should put together next. And then we go to Roman Dolidze, who is coming off multiple losses to both Marvin Vettori and Nasruddin Imavov, so he's going to have to look down in the rankings again. And I think the perfect fight for him is him versus Ikram Aliskerov. I know Aliskerov has only had 2 fights in the UFC, but he definitely deserves a ranked opponent. He was scheduled against Imavov and Paulo Costa. Now, both of those fights fell through, but I think a fight against Roman Dolidze makes the most sense out of everyone. It gives Ikram a chance to break into the top 10 with a win. He's definitely prepared for a ranked opponent. He definitely deserves a ranked opponent as well. I have said that Ikram Aliskerov is a future champion. I made a whole video on it, and I still stand by that. The guy is fairly young, very talented, one of the most decorated combat sambo artists, a 4-time combat sambo world champion. He's a very good striker, has insane power, a good submission artist, a good wrestler. So yeah, I think he definitely deserves a top 10 opponent. So that's how I would matchmake the top 10 of the middleweight division. But who do I think would win these fights? I would slightly lean Sean Strickland in a rematch with Dricus. Sean just keeps getting better. He has pretty good takedown defense now. Dricus was able to take him down a lot, but Sean was always able to get back up. Dricus couldn't hold Sean down, which is crazy because Dricus has amazing top pressure. He has ridiculous control, but Sean was able to work himself up from the bottom. And on the feet, Sean is just a more technical striker. He's patched his holes with the leg kicking defense. His boxing defense is elite. His leg kicking defense is bordering on elite. He just needs to learn how to defend the body shots, which I think him and his team, Eric Nixick, is one of the best coaches in all of MMA. I think they're definitely going to be focusing on that a lot. And he's just a much more technical striker than Dricus. He has an amazing jab. That jab's going to land all day on a guy who doesn't have great striking defense. He should have the cardio advantage as well, but I'm not counting Dricus out. He is much more dangerous than Sean, is a more powerful striker, and Sean does struggle against power punchers. You can also submit Sean on the ground. He has elite submissions, especially for the middleweight division, but I would slightly lean Sean in a rematch. Izzy versus Khamzat is interesting. In a 3-round fight, I would be more comfortable picking Khamzat. In a 5-round fight, it could get pretty competitive, but I will lean with Khamzat. I think he would be able to take Izzy down. Izzy doesn't have great takedown defense, and Khamzat is not only the best wrestler he's ever fought, but also brings a completely different style of wrestling. He's very tenacious with his takedowns. Will attempt 30 of them if he has to. He has ridiculous grappling pace. He has very good submissions, especially for the middleweight division. And if Izzy gives up his back like he sometimes does, Khamzat will absolutely take it, attempt rear nakeds, or roll for a Darce choke, which is his best submission. But if Izzy is able to defend some of the takedowns and escapes those early rounds, he is definitely going to have the cardio advantage and is just a much better striker on the feet. Khamzat is powerful. He's fast. He's very dangerous. I think his power would absolutely carry to the middleweight division. We saw how he knocked out Gerald Mearshart, but Izzy is so much more technical. Khamzat doesn't have great striking defense, doesn't really move his head. Those jabs from Izzy right down the center line are always going to be there. The kicks as well to keep Khamzat out of boxing range. The 1-2s as well. So if Izzy can survive those early rounds on the ground with Khamzat, because I don't see him stopping Khamzat's takedowns, especially early on, but if he can drag this into the 3rd, 4th round, if this is a 5-round fight, I think he's going to piece Khamzat up on the feet and eventually find a finish later in the 4th or 5th round. But if it is a 3-round fight, I like his chances a lot less. But I will go with Khamzat in both a 3-round and a 5-round. I'll lean with Whitaker in a rematch over Cannonier. Cannonier showed a lot in their first fight that I think he will bring over. Plus, this is a slightly worse version of Whitaker. He's looking much slower now than he was back then. And I could see a world where Cannonier is able to defend a lot of the takedowns. If Whitaker goes that route, Cannonier does have pretty good takedown defense, and he is a massive guy coming down from the heavyweight division. But I think that jab from Cannonier is going to be there. He showed that in their first fight, and the jab was a very good weapon for Paulo Costa. He's also a very powerful striker, and if he lands on the chin of Whitaker, whose striking defense isn't looking as good nowadays as it has in the past, he could absolutely knock him out. Plus, Whitaker doesn't have the best chin. We've seen him get dropped and knocked out many times before, like against Dricus, like against Adesanya. But I do think Whitaker will be able to stick at range, use his jab. Cannonier's striking defense isn't amazing, and Whitaker has one of the best jabs in the UFC. I also think he'll use some kicks. We saw him use the leg kicks very effectively against Paulo Costa, and I think that's something you could bring into this fight. We saw Izzy use the kicks very effectively against Jared Cannonier. I think it is a very tough fight, but I will lean with Robert Whitaker. Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen is an interesting one. Brendan Allen has to take this fight down. He has amazing jiu-jitsu, very good submissions, very good positional grappler. He submitted Paul Craig in his last fight, and Paul Craig is a very good grappler himself. But Vettori is a pretty good wrestler, does have decent takedown defense. Jared Cannonier was able to get him down, but Jared Cannonier is a very big guy. And if Brendan Allen can't take this fight down, I think Vettori is a better striker overall. He's very tough, has an amazing chin. That beating he took from Cannonier was ridiculous, and he never went down. And he's no slouch on the ground either, so I'll actually lean with Marvin Vettori in a very close fight. And then we got Paulo Costa versus Nasruddin Imavov. This is an interesting one. Costa did look better than he ever has against Robert Whitaker. He's very powerful. His jab looked good. He was using head kicks very well, using leg kicks very well as well. Imavov also has a very good jab, very good footwork, good defensively, good takedown defense if Paulo Costa does look to take this fight down. But he did show weakness in the clinch. Now, Costa doesn't really fight in the clinch too much, but if Costa does look to clinch up like Roman Dolidze did, he could absolutely hold him in the clinch. At range, I would say Imavov is a more technical striker, but Costa definitely hits harder than Imavov. Imavov also could look to take this fight down himself. He's a pretty decent wrestler, but Costa has pretty good takedown defense and is going to have a massive size advantage. But you know what? I'll lean with Paulo Costa. And then we got Anthony Hernandez versus Jack Hermanson. I'm definitely going to go with Anthony Hernandez. He is a very good grappler, decent wrestler. Once he gets his fight down on the feet, he's an okay boxer, very tough, great chin, will walk his opponents down. And we saw what happened when Sean Strickland walked Jack Hermanson down. But I think he would be able to take this fight down, use his grappling, look for submissions. I don't know if he'd submit Jack Hermanson, but he could definitely attempt them. Look for some ground and pound as well, and he's no slouch on the feet. And then I definitely think Ikram would beat Roman Dolidze, and I think he'd knock him out pretty quick. Dolidze is very powerful, but he's very wild. He wings on a lot of his shots. Those straight shots from Ikram are going to be right there. That right cross, that jab. As well, Roman Dolidze doesn't have the best takedown defense. I think Ikram could take this fight down if he wanted to, and although Dolidze is a very good grappler on the ground, has very good submissions, I don't see him submitting Ikram. And if he did look to take Ikram down, there's no way he'd get him down. Ikram defended every single takedown against Khamzat, who is a much better wrestler. He's not going to be able to control him in the clinch like he did against Nasruddin Imavov, so I definitely go with Ikram, and I think he'd knock him out in the first round. But that is how I think the matchmaking should go in the UFC middleweight division. It has the potential to be one of the best divisions. Guys just got to start fighting each other. But anyways, that's the end of the video. If you're new here and you did enjoy, please be sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications, like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.